Welcome to reSurgence Television. My name is Diane Wesley-Smith and I am your host. Today I have a special treat for you. We have Mr. Emmit Powell, ambassador, restaurateur, and an icon in San Francisco. And the reason it's such a special treat for me is I went to his restaurant, Powell's Place, and Powell's Place is located at 5251 3rd Street at Underwood in San Francisco. We had oxtails. First, let me back up. Someone asked me, where can you get soul food? Now, I grew up in San Francisco, and we're wondering, where can we get soul food? Where can we get soul food? And no one knows where we can get soul food. And so we always had Powell's, and then Mr. Powell relocated. And when he relocated, in the transition, we were without soul food. Well, anyway, I have the answer to that question. So please get a pencil and paper and write this down. All kinds of good soul food. We have oxtails. It's Southern style. Let me say it correctly. Southern soul food cuisine. The food is great. I kid you not. I brought some for my grandmother, and Grandma loved it. My husband loved it. And so it is truly on. I will be continually eating there when my figure can stand it. But actually, you know what? I ate there anyway, and I just walked 3rd Street to get my exercise. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce you to our guest today, Mr. Emmit Powell. Emmit, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Diane. It's a pleasure being here.
Thank you. I'm so glad that you're here. And
you remember I had you on my show when we were at Eddie and Fillmore.
Oh, that's right. I was at your show,
right.
And I really enjoyed it. I was so grateful for the opportunity to talk about real estate. I think we were talking about real estate.
Absolutely.
We were speaking about real estate before this big fiasco happened.
Right.
Because actually, I think you and many other longtime property owners saw it coming.
Right.
And it was very educational for me to appear on your show. So yes, isn't this something? So now I get to have you on my show.
Right.
I'm not as established as you, but I know that if I keep practicing and showing up and doing the next right thing, I know that I will walk in your footsteps.
Thank you.
Because I certainly want to be like you. And speaking of being like you, the reason I wanted to have you on the show, Emmit, is because I want to say Mr. Powell.
Emmit.
It's
fine.
Okay. Is because you're an icon. Everyone knows you. Everyone knows and respects you and loves your food. And you also you're involved in so many things. So I wanted to let people know a little bit more about you. This is more so for our younger viewers.
Well, Diane, I want to say something that the restaurant on 3rd Street, my nephew, it's really my nephew's business, but he said, I want you to run it and to keep the family name and traditional soul food going. So
Exactly.
It's a restaurant, but I'm there to help him, show him what's to do and everything, so I help him run it. So it's Vince Powell, who is the owner, but I'm there right with him.
Well,
It's good soul food.
It is really good soul food, but I'll say this. The name Emmit Powell caused me to come into the restaurant. That name, Powell, Emmit Powell, you have a well-respected name and in the community, and particularly when it comes to soul food. And also, speaking of, let's talk, well, we're not going to do news right now, but we do want to talk a little bit more about what you're doing, Emmit. And, if you don't mind, I'd like to go to the beginning and talk about, you mentioned that you came from Tallahassee, Florida.
I was born in Tallahassee, Florida.
Okay, and so here you are today, a successful businessman. You're kind enough and have a generous spirit. And the way I can tell is when I first heard your voice. I was mentioning to you when I first heard your voice on the radio. It was a gospel program.
Right.
And I said that he seems, if I felt God's spirit, you felt so calm, and that was years ago, and you're still the same today. And so what happened, this little boy was growing up in Tallahassee, Florida. And what happened? Did you have a dream, a vision?
I did. You know, I lost my father when I was 2 years old, and I lost my mother when I was 3. So I never knew either one of my parents, but I had God-fearing grandmothers and aunt.
Right.
Who made sure that my brother and I had the things that the rest of the children did.
Right.
And so she, first of all, that's love of God in her.
God, I'm glad you say that. Thank you for saying the G word, right. God. Yeah. There's no real success without God. Please continue.
And then, I went to school there, finished high school, then I went to Philadelphia, stayed with an uncle there, but I wanted to do something for my country, so I joined the service.
Okay.
My brother was in, and he was getting out, so I said, well, I'm going to go because I didn't want to go while there was any war. So I went to the service, and getting out of the service, I came to San Francisco.
Okay.
And I was supposed to be here just for a couple of weeks.
Oh, really?
I was going back to school in Philadelphia, Temple University. I was going to go to school. But the weather was so wonderful here in September. I said, well, I've got to stay here.
Yeah.
And I stayed here, and I promised my aunt I was going to go to school here. And I got a job after looking about 2 days at the great department store, the Emporium.
The Emporium. Oh, newsflash. See, a lot of people don't know the Emporium. What would we equate the Emporium to nowadays?
Well, it's really the new store down there that took a Bloomingdale's.
Yeah, Bloomingdale's.
Over the Emporium.
Okay, and very similar merchandise?
Oh, yeah, but
okay.
Not as high class. It was more compared with Macy's. Macy's was our competitor.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I started off as a stock clerk, and from there...
We used to call it the Big E, didn't we?
The Big E,
okay.
And a lot of people called me the Big E.
The Big E.
I was so involved with it. I started as a stock clerk, from there as a supervisor, there as a general supervisor, there as operational manager. Then I was promoted to downtown to the headquarters where I became director of transportation, and actually the highest Afro-American at the Emporium at the time.
Now, and we're not even halfway through the show. We're not going to be able to cover everything. But you mentioned that you were the highest African American executive at the Emporium. And I wanted to ask you, sometimes when we occupy high-level positions such as yourself, were you able to help any other African Americans? But sometimes there's a challenge. Do we hire someone? Are they really reliable? Are they going to make us look good or make us look bad? And so, what has been your experience?
Well, Diane, when I became an executive and promoted in a position, I told them I did not want to be a window dressing Afro-American.
All right.
If I was going to be a head of a department or head of a division, I want to have the authority. And they saw that I did. And I was able to bring on other people who, they were not doing any training for African Americans.
Mm-hmm.
They had a training program there, but they weren't having any Afro-Americans. So I went to the vice president and I said, look, we need to have more Afro-Americans here. He said, do you know any? I said, sure, I could help you bring some in.
That's right. And let me just stop you right at this point. Now, here we have an African American, a black man, who went to his superiors, so to speak, or I should say the boss, and suggested that there be training for others of African descent. And at this time, I'd just like to take this time to call upon others of us that are working in executive capacities, and to embrace the idea of bringing in more executive material.
That's right.
Executive African Americans. And I just needed to interrupt you because that's so important. Some of us say, well, I've got mine. No. I got mine. Oh, I don't know who I can call that's reliable. Well, if we don't know who we can call that's reliable, why don't we start looking in the schools where people show up every day, looking in the colleges and the universities. So what happened after Biggie? You recruited, you helped Biggie start some training program for African Americans. So needless to say, you had helped African Americans get hired and assume some very prestigious positions. So after you left Big E or the Emporium, then what did you do?
Well, I tell you, while I was at the Big E, knowing being an executive, you have nothing to fall on. You don't have a union behind you.
Right.
So I said, well, I might need something to fall back on because who knows what might happen. They
Fall back
let
on.
you go to the next day.
That's
so
right.
I went to Chicago and after to a friend